Talk of the Town is up and running in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, USA. I'm Scott Montesano, and this is where the Chippewa Valley comes to talk. Hey, the cool weather aside, it is a lovely Thursday and should be a great weekend. When the sun is out, it's gorgeous this time of the year, and there's plenty going on this weekend. Lots of garage sales. This is a garage sale weekend. I think it's probably the first big garage sale weekend. It's Mother's Day weekend as well, but it's a big garage sale weekend. There were a couple in our neighborhood last week, but today, driving out to Menominee and was over by Tainter Lake, that whole area around Tainter Lake, it's one of those neighborhood coordinated garage sales. It's not a big street fair. It's not a block party, but all of the surrounding houses, a lot of the surrounding houses and the various 5-6 house communities around Tainter Lake, the various streets, all with garage sales, and very well publicized because it was busy around there today. And I know there are other garage sales in the area. Get out and about. A lot of people will get out and about. I'm not a big rummage sale guy, as we would call it back in the Northeast growing up, but I'm not a big guy to go to the garage sales like I'm going to get into a car and search around. But if there's something going on in the neighborhood, it's kind of like how people used to do open houses. It may still do it, be a looky-loo. Oh, you're going to look at your neighbor's junk. I know my wife and daughter just last week were checking out a neighbor is moving, and they've got their house for sale by owner, and they went and took a look at the stuff. Didn't buy anything, but took a look at the stuff. It is also Mother's Day weekend. We have lamented on this program before the fact that it is no longer popular to have the Mother's Day brunches. I don't know if you've got any Mother's Day brunches in the area. There are brunches going on. There's standard brunches, but there's no big Mother's Day brunch buffet. And if there is one, it's either probably already booked up, which they didn't have to advertise, or if they're saying, hey, I've got it, you didn't get the word out enough. I didn't know about it. Scotty didn't know about it. I miss the Mother's Day brunch buffets. They're still big where I'm from, where I grew up. But you haven't had them in that. Really, the places where the Mother's Day brunch buffet was always the best were at your convention spots, your banquet halls, sort of thing, and hotels. Well, in this area, I don't think the Holiday Inn on the south side with Johnny's is really the closest thing we have to one of those hotel convention center type things where they put on a lot of weddings and stuff. I don't think they're doing it. Florian Gardens used to have a great one, but that died with COVID 6 years ago. They've never brought it back. I miss those. I'm sure, and this is not a knock, I'm sure there's VFWs and Legion Halls that have got brunch buffets, and I have heard nothing but the quality of those are great. I'm sure it is. I am sure it is. But for a Mother's Day brunch, you kind of want to get dressed up. You want to get dressed up. You're paying for something. It's speaking of niceties, if you will. This weekend is my 17th wedding anniversary. Saturday night, in fact. In fact, we were married the Saturday before Mother's Day in 2009. And I'll always remember that we had our wedding, and then the next day was Mother's Day. And when we went back downstairs the next morning after our wedding, all the flowers from our wedding were still there, and they were using them as decoration for the Mother's Day celebration, which, of course, we took part in that brunch as well. And we were getting all, high fives from people. It was great. But I've said this before. When we for our wedding anniversary, we like to go to Johnny's, and I've gone to some other places in the area for high end eating, for Mother's Day and the such. But we go to Johnny's, and when I go to Johnny's, I'm getting a steak that probably I could get cheaper anywhere else. But you're paying for the flair, the accoutrement of the spot. And sometimes you want that. And when I'm looking at, say, Mother's Day brunch, it's not. I can probably some of the food at the brunch buffets, these fancy Mother's Day brunches, wasn't particularly great growing up. What the hell is seafood Newburgh when you think about it? But there was a certain je ne sais quoi to it, with the carpeting and everybody dressed up nice and the chairs that have got the high backs to them. You were going to a banquet hall. I miss that. As an aside, this weekend, no fancy dinner for Mr. Montesano. Instead, we're going to go down to watch Yankees Brewers this weekend. Yankees Brewers this weekend. Looking forward to that. I'm not a fan of AmFam Field. Not a fan. I don't like it. I just don't like AmFam Field. But I do love baseball. And I'd rather see baseball in a bad ballpark than no baseball in a great ballpark, if that makes sense. It's also prom season. That continues on. May all the kids out there continue to have great weekends with the proms. I think this weekend is Memorial's prom. And speaking of Eau Claire Memorial and the Eau Claire School District, fallout from the Eau Claire Area School District, their board decision earlier this week, on the heels of what Chippewa Falls did last week, and other districts have done kind of quietly here and there, cuts to teacher positions, significant cuts to teacher positions as these school districts wrestle with a supply and demand issue and deficits. Decreasing enrollment coupled with significant deficits that are real. And we can sit here and hem and haw as to why those deficits have existed and certain decisions that may or may not have influenced it years ago. But the reality is costs have gone up. Ability to generate revenue has remained flat for schools. And you can go back to Tuesday's show and hear more about that. But people are upset. And a lot of people have valid arguments. They're frustrated. People don't want to see teachers cut. They want to see nameless, faceless people, and many times non-existent people in administration buildings cut. All right, they want that. Don't cut the teachers, and especially if people know or they've had some type of connection to a teacher. There are, by the way, and it goes to the support staff as well. People want administration cut, but not the administration they know. Again, it's all faceless, nameless, and sometimes non-existent people they want cut. Because if you know the person, well, you know they do a good job. But the person you don't know, you can assume they can be cut because it hasn't impacted you. But people are upset, and a lot of people have valid arguments, saying, why are we cutting teachers? They spent money on this. I know they spent money on this. Why? I was walking through the school, and there's all these brand new television monitors. What do they need that for? They spent money on a weight room. There's money spent on band rooms. That whole new theater at Memorial. The 2 new football ballparks that were built. Oh, why is that much? Here's the thing. First off, with all the money that was spent, it's all part of the budget, if you will, and somebody would have to show me, because a lot of that money that was spent was not fun money. I will point that out. Now, the football ballparks and all that, and the new theater and stuff of that nature, sit down, maybe explain that to me. How could we have taken that money? But in reality, you still needed those things. I know it doesn't seem like a need, but But you were needing those things. We've talked about facilities are really falling behind. All right. I don't know if there's been wasted money. I don't know if there's been wasted money. All right. I just don't. But a lot of people, when they complain, I just said people usually are upset when somebody they know is let go. They want somebody they don't know let go. The same thing comes when you see people complaining a lot about the football stadiums, or they're complaining about the band rooms being renovated. Usually people are complaining about investments in things they don't use or they don't see a benefit to. And again, like I've said before, a lot of that is people losing sight of community. For instance, obviously I'm a sports guy. Oh, of course, Scott, you're going to defend the spending on the sports. But I don't poke holes in the music spending. I don't poke holes in, well, why'd we spend money on a new theater at Memorial? Why'd we do that? That seems stupid. But see, we've hit the point of the argument now where people will sit there and go, it's stupid that we're cutting a band position, but we spent all that money on that new football stadium. I'm saying I'd like to have both. And I don't think the two are connected. I don't think you have to let the band people go because money was spent on the football stadium. I don't think teachers are being let go because money was invested into the new theater. You'd really have to dig down and parse that out. If you've ever worked in business or run business and run the budgets, I know it doesn't seem like this, but a lot of times they're not connected with each other. All that being said, it is valid frustration from people that we have hit this point, and as we talked about on Tuesday, folks, the argument is much above the heads of the locals. You can be all pissed off you want at the board. You can be all pissed off at Stephanie Farr, the board president, because of what her husband did at UW-Eau Claire. Absolutely. She's so far left, she's actually right. She's so far liberal, she almost comes back around conservative. They are very woke, Stephanie Farr. But her wokeism is not the issue here at all. And I will tell you this. There's a growing number of people, and this is short-sighted, that are starting now to say, well, why do we need music? Why do we need art? And by golly, why do we need sports at school? It should just be math, reading, writing, arithmetic, science. That's all you need. Folks, read through that BS. Read through that. That's people, many times, who have an agenda, who are trying to this push to, in many ways, crush public education and simultaneously and crush the parochials, because they're tied in with the publics in this argument, and try to raise up all of those for-profit privates. And I understand a lot of them are technically tax-wise nonprofits. You understand what I mean. They have to make money. Because the for-profits, the various fill-in-the-blank academies, which, as we said before, serve a very valuable niche, they cannot compete with the level of co-curriculars. Some have music as part of their curriculum, but it's not robust music education, and they can't offer athletics, and they can't offer a lot of other clubs and activities. They just simply can't. And the thing you are getting more and more with all the research, and one of the best things that publics and parochials have really designed in the last 15 years, part of the fact that those forms of education have had decades of figuring it out and are constantly pivoting on the fly, is schools are looked at more, public schools and parochial schools, this elementary, middle, and high school education as getting kids to the quote-unquote starting line. And it's part of a full, well-rounded education. That includes various activities that go beyond simply learning 1 + 1 = 2. I mean, the stats are off the charts in benefit to having these co-curriculars. They are not a detriment to academics. They are part of it. So again, the frustration people have, honest to God, is very real. What we have to do as a community, and you're starting to see more and more of these state representatives announcing re-election bids and others putting their names in the hat for November elections. This has to be a focus at a statewide level. They have to begin to undo the belts a little bit. And remember, it is also not just a school issue, it's a local community issue. We've had the same issue with limits placed on communities like Eau Claire. The math doesn't math. Bigger communities aren't able to keep pace. They're not allowed to keep pace. It all looks fine and dandy when a certain part of the government's able to say, oh, no, we're keeping costs low and we're just, hey, they just have to figure it out. But they know that that's not how it's going to ultimately work. At one point, you and I are going to have to either pay more on the dollar for the same value, or have to make cuts that otherwise could be avoided. And I think Stephanie Farr, to bring her up again, as much as you may not like her, and it might be one of the smartest political things she's said, because it's very easy for a lot in education to point at the Republicans because they are the ones in charge. But the Democrats aren't not at fault either on this. And I do remember I had a person high up in education tell me, about a year ago, Tony Evers made that announcement of funding for schools and whatnot, and this person high up in education told me it's one of the worst things that could have been done because it just added another cap is what it did. It was a look-good thing for him, but it wasn't going to solve anything, and it was another way for Republicans then to say, well, see, we don't have to do anything. Look at this. All right. Continuing on. And I do want to point out, I'm not saying I'm against these for-profit privates. I think they serve a purpose. What I'm saying is they are not a replacement, a full-on replacement for the established public and parochials right now. They just aren't. They serve a niche. And a niche does not necessarily mean a very small group. What they serve is, what I mean by niche, is a group that's looking for something that is very specific. All right? For a variety of reasons. That's what they serve right now. Give it 2-3 generations, and maybe the whole thing is turned on its head. But it's going to be very hard to replicate what public and long-standing parochials have done. They have learned. They have changed. For every problem you might think you've heard on XYZ news outlet about what's going on in schools, a lot of times it's overblown. It really is. I can tell you, folks, you walk down a lot of these schools' hallways, there's not pride flags everywhere and teachers standing up there with photos of Kamala Harris on their doors, telling the kids to stand up against the establishment. I mean, no. Are there teachers that exist that are that? Absolutely. But as I had a person very smartly point out to me, especially in this area, a lot of the young teachers entering education, get close to your speaker. A lot of the young people coming up now are a lot more conservative and moderate than you may believe. Don't make assumptions. Just because what you saw the school districts down south do isn't necessarily equal to everywhere. Okay. Somewhat funny story because nobody got hurt and there wasn't anything stolen, but there was a break-in at the Eau Claire Children's Museum earlier this week, and it was somewhat funny. Sean Craig, 22, and Ethan Gulhas, age 19, both local, are believed to have used a roof hatch on Tuesday evening to get into the Eau Claire Children's Museum, where they then went exploring and played with the stuff. I mean, that's pretty much what it was. Police were alerted by a passerby just shy of 10 p.m. So somebody was driving by and they saw something going on at the Children's Museum, and it didn't look quite right because the museum closes at like 5 or 6 o'clock, and lights must have been off, but there must have been just enough on that somebody thought something may have been going on. So the police showed up. Craig and Gulhas tried to escape, and they got caught nearby and admitted that they got in there, admitted that they were told that the roof hatch was going to be open. Now, no doubt the police are going to do some investigating into finding out how they may have known that the roof hatch was open. Had somebody already tried to go in and tip them off? Or is there a worker there that maybe served as an inside lead to them? They didn't steal anything, though. They just wanted to explore. It's not part of the police report, but I wonder if one of them had a phone on them. A lot of times people like this are trying to do something for content. Looks like they had some THC with them, but it's not as though they were hooped up on too many goofballs doing this. They may have been doing it for content reasons. You see it a lot with, say, stadiums, people breaking into stadiums, or people, when an event is over, how long can they hide out after the event and try to be the last one there, or even can they stay in there so long that the place closes and they spend the night? It's part of a content thing, so we'll see. Thankfully, nothing was stolen. Children's Museum opened up the next day. Took a little time to clean up, but they opened without any incident there. One of the rare times the museum's actually been in the news recently. But remember, the museum was a big deal for a couple of years. Now, my kids have kind of aged out of the museum, unfortunately. But I'd like to think I don't really have any ties to the museum anymore, and you don't hear a lot publicly from the museum. I think some people that I used to have connections to that worked there, they don't work there anymore. Some others that may have been on the board are no longer on the board there. And the museum doesn't really send out a lot of public relations stuff. But I'd like to think it's still doing great. It opened up. It was gorgeous when it opened up. Immediately one of the pillars of downtown. It had been a pillar in its old location. And when it reopened up, in the gorgeous new facility, even more of a pillar, and you hope that's continued on. That's one of those places that you really appreciate that you have it when you go to some other markets. Speaking of something we have in this area, Thursday night there's going to be a sold-out show at the Pablo Center, a true crime show that a podcaster, not with us, he's a national true crime podcaster, is doing a lecture in front of what is going to be a sold-out audience at the Pablo Center on Thursday night. You can check out our latest Beyond the Stage with the Pablo for more details on what that show was. If you're listening on Thursday, you might be able to still get in there, but more likely after. So that's a sold-out show. It's going to be a sold-out show. And Saturday night, Kathy Wright at the Pablo telling me that another sold-out event, part of what's been a sold-out May at the Pablo Center, it'll be the Chippewa Valley Symphony, which tends to draw good crowds, but they don't necessarily pack it all the time. They are selling out on Saturday for what will be the final show for the conductor, Nobu Yushada. Yushada? Nobu. I know the name Nobu. That's what he goes by. I have botched that last name. Completely botched that last name. He deserves a lot better. He's been in this area since the early 90s. Started off as a UW Eau Claire instructor. He's been the conductor of the symphony for generations, and he is retiring. This was an announcement made last summer. We had him on a Pablo Center podcast back in the fall, and boy, is he full of a lot of stories. He was a joy to listen. I sat back for 30 minutes and laughed and giggled and really was taken back. He's a master storyteller. He's got a lot of stories, and a lot of people that have been involved in entertainment and music in this area have got Nobu stories. Best of luck to him as he moves on to his next chapter. One thing you feel great for him. Been in this area for a number of years. He came, didn't expect to stay as long as he ended up staying. A common story for a lot of people. I'm going to be here briefly, and then you end up getting hooked in. We talk about all these great new facilities our area has got. Remember, he in the symphony for many years performed at the State Theater, which, fine enough facility, but for years they dreamed of a gorgeous palace. And sometimes people that put their heart and soul into something for many, many years don't necessarily get to benefit when that thing moves on someplace else. For instance, take UW Eau Claire basketball, for instance, and all the players that played at Zorn Arena, especially in the last few years. And maybe they graduated a year or two before Sonnentag opened up and were never able to take advantage of Sonnentag. Happy for a guy like Nobu that for years, part of the symphony and was around long enough that followed the symphony over to the Pablo Center. And the Pablo Center is a miniature version of one of these grand theaters that you have in other parts of the country with all of the bells and whistles that you would want. So that'll be a sold-out show on Saturday night. And we didn't talk about it last week. We'll talk more about it later in the summer, early fall when it opens. But such great news that space at Haymarket is going to be the thing we all dreamed it would be, and that is a restaurant. That announcement last week. They had to get out from underneath the contract of Foxconn and what have you, which if that had come to fruition, would have been good. It really would have been. Workers downtown, that would have one thing that downtown maybe lacks is that office-type building that's got 70, 80, 100 workers. So it would have been great if that had happened. But now that it didn't, everybody dreamed of that being that being a restaurant. Let's just say what it was, and it's going to be a high-end restaurant, a Latin American steakhouse kind of thing. Don't let the term Latin American worry you. Folks, it's going to be tasty stuff, and it's going to be high-end. Yeah, it's not going to be $10 burgers with $7 cheese curd appetizer. You want to know what? We got a lot. We got the district right next door, which does that very well. This is going to be higher end. It's going to be the sort of place where it's going to be a little more expensive. But we've talked about it on this program all the time. We'll see if it's a higher quality. If it's a higher quality where you go and it feels really special, like I was saying with the Mother's Day brunches, that's great. It'd be fantastic. And imagine this with the views of the river and the Pablo. And imagine you're going there before a show, maybe get some high-end drinks after a show, or maybe you go there on a day in which you're not going to the show at the Pablo, but there's a lot of activity going around. It will be nice. It will be another addition to the area. I wish it nothing but the best. Nothing but the best. And I wish you nothing but the best this weekend. Back with you on Tuesday. On behalf of everyone who made this podcast possible, I'm Scott Montesano saying there's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow shining at the end of every day. Make sure to take advantage of it. And until next time, so long, everybody.